Hi, it's Jen Healy. I'm back with another video in this series in preparation for our teacher training coming up. And I wanted to talk to you guys about the alignment principles and the real big takeaways. There's so many things that I'd love to share in the teacher trainings. This is going to be an aerial yoga play and an AYRx Therapeutix combination. So this is my professional training, I call it. 2 days of aerial yoga play and 2 days of AYRx Therapeutix. So the AYRx Therapeutix is the latest rendition. It is the application of the swing for working with healing the body. So that could be an injury, it could be an illness, it could be a limitation, but it's understanding how to address specific needs for our clients and our students. So the swing can be a therapeutics, a healing practice. So in that practice, in every one of the poses, once you learn the poses, then we learn how to apply them. So in this practice, we want to know the 12 most important and significant alignment principles. So in this practice, the first thing that we work with is spiral dynamics. Now that's a big name. And what does that mean? It means we're working with the spins and the spirals and the sacred geometry of the body. And I'll get more into that when we get into more of the advanced teachings. But in the spiral dynamics, the first thing that we want to do is lengthen the spine. And the spine, when I'm working with the spine, I focus on the two major hubs, the hips and the shoulders and neck. And this happens to be the pathway of the nervous system as well. So there's a lot of congestion and tension in this part of the body. It also happens to be where people accumulate the most injury. It obviously affects our digestion and our lymph and our hormones, our thyroid, our reproductive system, our adrenals. It's all connected to the spine. The endocrine system overlays the chakra system, which overlays the spine. So they're all intertwined to our energy levels and our energy managers, and even our brain and our brain function is so dependent on our spine and on our posture and our alignment. So I call this dynamic tension. And the first principle is about lengthening the spine by using the swing to lift the chest, lift the sternum, while we let gravity let the hips drop and be heavy. So we're always lifting and engaging in one part of the body, and we're always relaxing and dropping in the opposite end. Right? So if we're upright, we're going to lift the sternum, lift the chest, keep the head directly over the body, and then we're going to let the hips sink, the tailbone drop, and we're going to press down either into the ground or into the swing so that we can get maximum length and maximum space. So I call that dynamic tension, where the body's always going in two opposite directions. And so that's really different, and that intention and that focus, attention in the body will create a totally different relationship to our posture and our alignment. I'm going to take a peek here at my little cheat sheet to make sure I do them in order. So yes, so the next is the sternum. So we start with the spine and then we go to the chest. We always want to lift the chest. This is actually a heart opening practice. And one of my teacher trainings in yoga was in Anusara yoga. And with Anusara, it's all about opening the heart. So this is a heart-centered practice. So we always want to lead with the heart, and that is called lifting the sternum. And that brings us to our upper thoracic spine. So the swing holds underneath our arms for half of the postures, for our upright postures. And so that is helping us arch and open up from the upper thoracic spine. So we're initiating our back bends way higher up than our lumbar spine. And that makes a big difference for getting the head back over the body and to keep the chest open in all of the poses. Most people are moving head first into the world, and that has its repercussions on the spine and on the tension for the neck and the C7 joint. And when we want to start to shift, getting our head back over our bodies and letting the heart lead the way and moving from the upper thoracic spine. Okay, so I just covered a couple there in a row. So we always keep our head right underneath our plumb line, right? So we want to imagine there being like a little kite from the very center crown of the head pulling us straight up. That's our pillar or our plumb line. And then our spine is sinking straight down through our tailbone into the ground. And we always want to know where our pillar is. So finding our pillar through the position of the head is super important. And then from there, we want to lead with the heart, right? The head directly over the body, and then our gaze is up. So this is really important for us to lead with the heart and let our heart look and lead the way, have our heart gaze, our heart looking up. Then we want to change our position of where our focal point is. 99% of the time, the people I work with, they're looking down all the time. We look down at our phones, you know, we're looking down at our computer. Hopefully we're not looking down when we're driving. But if we look up, or if you think of looking towards your third eye, looking at that space in between the eyebrows, then wherever your gaze goes, your energy flows, right? So that gives you an upliftment, or that, like, that looking up is actually the opposite of being depressed or your energy being down. So this whole practice is about uplifting and inspiring our yoga, taking our yoga to the next level. So that is really important. If we're going to open the heart and lead with the heart, we want to look up. And that's really a nice cue for keeping the head back over the body. Okay, next one is about our lats and our wings, right? So most of the time I work with people who have a lot of tension in the neck and shoulders. It's very popular these days. And that's because of, you know, doing this and stress and the position of the body, especially sitting, driving, all of that. So our lats, it's the wings on our back, they get really weak, you know, they get really tired or weak from underuse, right? So they get lazy. That's the word I was looking for. So we want to engage our lats. Our lats are going to pull our wings onto our back. So our shoulders are going to spread wide apart instead of them being up by our ears. So you want to think of our wings kind of rotating back. And so we're pulling towards the center line right behind the heart where my thumbs are. Okay, so we let the shoulders spread and the bottom tips of the wings pulling towards one another actually gives a platform for the heart to lift and the open. And then our wings sit on our back. Usually our shoulders are rounded forward, and that creates all kinds of weakness in the front of the chest and tension for the C7 joint and the upper body and neck. So we want to get our wings on our back by engaging our lats. It's such an important alignment principle. And we can do that even standing, you know, when we have the swing, something to pull down against, you can really feel that engagement. And without it, we're going to start to retrain the body to find it even when we're outside the swing. But at first you'll see people like this, right? You know, the little turtleneck. So we want to really bring the shoulders back and down and wide at the top, and then pull them towards the center line right behind the heart, the bottom tips of the shoulder blades for the lats to come in. You always bring the elbows in too. That's another key. If your elbows are flared out, you can guarantee that your shoulders are kind of crunched in towards the center line. And so we pull the elbows in, let the shoulders spread, lift the chest, engage the lats. Okay, next one is going to be the shoulder loop. So not only do we want to get the wings on the back and we want to start initiating our back bends from the upper thoracic spine, but we're going to create this external spiral. And so I talked about the spiral dynamics and how there's spins and spirals in all the joints. So they're ball and socket, you know, it's basically going to roll around. So the external spiral is from the center of the heart. We're going to roll up and back and down, and it's like a wheel, like on a train. It's a wheel, and we don't want to just jam them straight down or jam them straight back. We want to bring them up and back and down like they're spherical, and that makes a big difference. So this is an external rotation here in the chest. And then when we get the legs, we're going to do an internal rotation in the hips. So you follow the iliac crest from the sacrum, spreading the sacrum all the way around to the navel or the belly button. And then the thighs roll in and back. And that's going to create alignment where the femur can sit in the hip socket a little bit better. So we have an external spiral in the chest, in the shoulders, and then we have an internal spiral in the legs and in the hips to create proper alignment for the joints and for the spine. Very important. And then, like I said in the beginning, our hips stay heavy, our heart stays open, and our head stays aligned, sitting right on top, relaxed. So hips heavy is going to allow gravity to do the work to create that dynamic tension to open up the spine. So hips heavy. So we want to roll in that internal rotation. We want to roll our pubic bone down and back. Most people, their hips are locked and their pubic bone is kind of shoved forward. So we want to make sure we drop our pubic bone and roll it back and down, and that actually initiates the internal spiral of the legs too. It's pretty amazing how it's all connected. Next is core engagement. So in core engagement, we want to make sure that we're working from the pivot point of our hips, of our belly. All of our movement comes from our belly. And this is where we have the most power, the most leverage. Okay, so we're always engaging through our core, which is the entire torso, pulling our navel in and up. So we don't want the ribs to flare out. We want to open up the heart and not just the rib cage. So we make sure that our arch is a little bit higher in the upper thoracic and not just at the ribs by pulling the navel in and up and staying really engaged through the core in every single pose. And then when we start to learn all the pivot points and lowering our center of gravity and leveraging our power, this will make a lot more sense in the more advanced training. Next, we want to work, like I said, with the upper body, arching from the upper back. Our lower back is always happy in all these poses, especially when we go into deep back bends or bows. We don't want to arch from the lumbar, which is already curved in that direction, which means we have a tendency to pinch the discs. There's always people coming to me with pinched discs or ruptured discs. It's a very popular problem, and that creates degeneration. So we regenerate the body by creating space, by creating movement, by creating fluidity, and then bringing more blood and oxygen to that part of the body by opening it up and letting it flow. So it's a really powerful healing practice to start to arch from the upper thoracic spine, allowing the head to go back and sink over the body, lifting the chest, keeping the core engaged, and the lower back stays nice and happy. So our pubic bone is tucked under, and our tailbone is also pressing straight down. So it's like your pubic bone and your tailbone are always pressing towards one another to get this upliftment through the spine. And at the same time, the hips are going to stay heavy and grounded in almost all the poses. Obviously, when we're upside down, we reverse that, right? Then our upper body would be heavy. But in most upright postures, we keep our hips heavy and our chest lifted. And that encourages that dynamic tension, that we keep the spine like a guitar string. We're always tightening it and tuning it so that it stays in harmony. It has a nice vibration to it. We're almost done here, so we want to stack the bones. This is one of the really important things that we learned from yoga, and for those that don't have a strong yoga practice, it's 100% okay. You can still take the teacher training, you can still come to the workshops, but we always want to stack the bones. What does that mean? So we always want to keep our hands shoulder distance and our feet hip distance in all of the poses where we are holding our weight when we're weight bearing. And then we always want to stack the bones too out in a T position or straight out in front of us so that our hands, our wrists, our shoulders, they all stay in a straight line. That's our strongest point, right? When we're going to hold our weight, we want to keep everything stacked, especially in a handstand. It's amazing to me how many people in a handstand will bend their elbows, right? And then you're going to fall on your head. So we always keep our arms stacked, our bones stacked, nice and straight in chaturangas, in our plank poses, all of those poses. Even we did a lot of poses where we're in airplane or wings. We want to keep our arms out in a T position because it's the strongest position. And the same with our feet. Just always make sure that our hips and our knees and our ankles are always stacked. Even in a lunge, make sure the knee is stacked right over the ankle. So stacking the bones, it's our strongest position. Really important. And last but not least, support the head with our interlaced fingers. So if our head is relaxed back, we can let the heart lead the way. And sometimes we're straining our neck way too much in poses. I see it all the time, people coming in with real intense neck pain, and then they're creating even more tightness. We don't want to create any tension in the body. So we interlace our fingers, and then we place them right behind the occipital ridge, right where the neck meets the skull, and we keep our elbows wide out in a T position, not past the T, not too much so we don't strain the shoulders, but we pull straight out with a strong clasp, and then we let our head sink back into our hands whenever we need support. I just tell people use Chillaxin Arms all the time to help create this space and the openness for the chest to lift. It's amazing. It feels really good. And then we're rearranging our shoulders. We're opening up our posture and getting that nice big lift through the upper thoracic spine. So always support the head with your hands. I call it Chillaxin Arms. Thank you so much for listening. I'm really looking forward to this teacher training coming up, and there will be more to come. You can find out about my practices and programs at aerialyogarx.com.